So roughly, as of this podcast anyway, 2 weeks, a week and a half ago, we were talking about troop choices in 8th edition 40K. Now, there's a lot of crossover between units in 40K, a lot of synergy. And I'm not just talking about psychic powers, but units working together, vehicles working with units. You would not want to just isolate a single type of unit or model on the table. It doesn't exist that way. That's why, like, stat line alone, it's not just the stats, it's how they interact with everything else. But knowing that and kind of framing that for the sake of the discussion, this idea, what do you think is the best troop choice in 40K? And I put my vote out there. A lot of you, I appreciate the feedback. I can't say that you were wrong. You know, I tried to make a case from a very, very strong point, but there were equally strong points that I would be hard-pressed to refute. One of the pushes, one of the suggestions was Dire Avengers on there. Now, in my Footdar list, I play Dire Avengers, but this is something, it's interesting, I won't say subconsciously, but this is something that I've been leaning on a little bit more with my Sam-Hain Warhost, which that's what we're gonna look at, a little bit of the synergy there in this podcast. And I have to recognize and admit that that's the direction I've kind of been going in on there. So my plan, in addition to getting the Grey Knights to the table, getting Chaos on the table, getting Tyranids on the table on there, is to experiment out a little bit more and try a little bit more out. Now, up in my archive on my YouTube channel here, I have about 3 or 4 Sam-Hain Warhost videos that outline the tactics, outline the play style, and the synergy behind it. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I am going to just kind of sidestep for a moment and share with you the brief thought process behind it. So if you're new to my podcasts, Google recommendations, whatever, that'll kind of frame it for your next step. When I created my Sam-Hain army, I wanted everything to be mech'd up. I did not want anything on foot. I wanted the focus to be jet bikes. I wanted lots and lots of jet bikes on the table. So with that, I looked and said, well, what units can work with the positive attributes of the jet bikes, meaning massive speed on there? Okay, Vipers, and plus jet bikes and Vipers, the narrative, Sam-Hain Craft World. Looking at Wave Serpents, looking at Fire Prisms, looking at essentially grav tanks on there. That is not to say you can't play Wraith Lords. That's not to say you can't play parts on foot. But what I noticed was the strength of the Sam-Hain Warhost, speed in 40K. Speed in 40K, everything moving as one giant swarm, as one giant wolf pack, and leveraging the dice in one area and then getting out of there. I won't say hit and run because there's really not enough room on the gaming table anymore for a hit and run type army. It's a little bit more challenging to run, but that was the idea. And early on, as I was playing around with the army, I played Rangers. I explored with Guardians on foot. I explored Vol support weapons and things like that. And I found it was a real disadvantage because here I am wolfpacking with the rest of my units, and these units on foot, they were easily taken out. They were easily isolated on there. So this is not saying that those elements don't exist in the craft world or you can't play a certain way. I'm admitting that there are self-imposed limitations. With that, because I had so many jet bikes, the focus of the army was groups of jet bikes working with groups of Vipers. And the jet bikes, using the speed, and of course based on the mission, based on the terrain, other factors on there, a jet bike group, I would pick a target, a unit, and that unit needs to get wiped out this turn. I might take one jet bike group, I might take 2. They're going to move, they're going to get in position, they're going to shoot. So if you have a tac squad, jet bike 1, group 1 is going to obliterate that tac squad. Now, volume of dice in 40K. You know, the dice are the dice. So I would have a group of Vipers hanging back a little bit, still being in range, but being able to attack either, say, the unit I'm shooting at or another unit as the idea of this cleanup crew. So the idea is if the dice don't quite work out with the jet bikes, then the Vipers lay some additional dice and take you out. Based on the nature of Jetbikes and based on their expense, and that Eldar are a little bit more expensive on there, especially if everything's mech'd up. I don't have access to cheap troops. I'm taking Guardians, but I'm putting them in Wave Serpents on there. And again, yes, self-imposed narrative, but this is just playing out my setup. What I realized, that's why I need to make sure whatever I shoot at, it is destroyed. So I cannot be shot at by that unit. I can't be counterattacked. And that's where the Vipers come into play. And then the Wave Serpents and the Fire Prisms and the other Grav tank support units, they're there to add some more dice. They're there to work up the sides, outflank, and do kind of all those different things. Again, in the podcasts, really spell it out. But there's this idea in 40K, critical mass. You need to have enough, I was going to say metal and plastic, enough models on the table that as you take losses every turn, you can still generate volume of dice. You can still generate a positive effect. And I use the term alpha. You still need to be able to generate alpha every single turn. Example, if I'm shooting with attack squad and I got 10 Marines, that's the full volume of dice that they can generate. If you have 8 or 7 left because you've taken some losses, okay, you can still do some damage. It's got some bite. As soon as you drop down below 5 or 4, now you just don't have the combat efficiency. You don't have the alpha to be able to reliably generate the dice to cause enough damage. So with the Jetbikes, what I've noticed over time, of course, every other army is increasing in 40K. Games are getting bigger and bigger. I've kind of gone as big as I can with the Jetbikes because I need the Viper cores, and I want to get some other toys on there. Now, in my Wave Serpents, I will most of the time take Guardians, but I have other aspects, and I'll swap them in because, look, narrative-wise, the Sam-Hain Craft World, they have the aspect shrines on there, but what I'm finding is I can't really lead with the Jetbikes anymore because it's just not enough of them. I'm finding more and more, and this goes back to the troop selection video, more and more I'm looking at Dire Avengers, moving up fast with the Wave Serpents, engaging that way. The Jetbikes then support, and the Vipers are kind of running third. I'm getting my support in points, I'm getting my support in model mass, and I'm getting my support more and more in the Dire Avengers. I might have to cut back a couple of bikes, that a couple of groups there. It pains me a little bit, but it's interesting to see how the shift, it's there. And I've been heading in a while. So that's kind of an update where the army is. And again, I'm not dropping any units. I'm just changing the composition of them, the numeric composition of them, of what I need to take to adjust. Because above all, one of my philosophies in 40K has always been, yes, we want to win, but you're going to be playing so many games of 40K, ultimately long term. I believe it's vitally important to play the units, the models, the army you want to play. Because you're developing that currency, you're developing that history, you're developing literally a living part of your army. 40K gaming is too short to play units that you're only taking to win at all costs, or because right now they're in the local meta, in my opinion. Because you got to have the heart, you got to have the passion in there with what you want to play. That doesn't mean we're not going to try and win.